All right, let's jump right in. For decades, we've been told this one single story about climate change and the economy. You know the one. It's all about cost, about sacrifice, and all these impossible choices. But what if that story is totally out of date? What if we're on the verge of the biggest growth story of the 21st century? When we see pictures of melting glaciers or hear about the climate crisis, our first thought is usually about everything we might have to give up. The whole conversation has been framed as a trade-off, like it's a zero-sum game between our prosperity and the planet's health. And while that's an understandable way to feel, it's actually fundamentally flawed. Because something huge has shifted, something powerful, all driven by technology and innovation. What if the very things we need to do to solve the climate crisis are the exact same things that will unlock a new, more prosperous, and way more efficient global economy? That's the big idea we're going to dig into today. So, to really get a handle on this new story, we first have to unpack the old one. That dilemma that has shaped, well, decades of policy, and how we all think about this. This was the standard thinking for so long. You could have a booming economy, sure, but it had to be powered by cheap, dirty energy. Or you could protect the environment, but that would come at a huge cost to growth and development. It was always presented as one or the other, this painful choice we just had to live with. And the stakes for this choice? They are incredibly high. I mean, just look at this. This chart shows us the potential futures based on the path we take. If we stick to our current path, that's those deep red bars, a child born today is going to grow up in a world with potentially catastrophic warming, a climate our civilization has literally never experienced. The urgency to change course couldn't be clearer. But here's the amazing part. Just as that urgency hit its peak, the rules of the game completely changed. A quiet but massive technological revolution has totally upended that old economic dilemma. This quote from the economist Nicholas Stern just nails it. It really captures the heart of this revolution. Across so many different sectors, from energy to transportation, the sustainable choice is no longer just the right thing to do, it's the smart economic thing to do. And this isn't some pie-in-the-sky theory. It is backed by hard, cold data. In a single decade, just 10 years, the cost to get energy from solar has absolutely plummeted. What used to be this expensive, kind of niche technology is now one of the cheapest forms of new electricity you can build on the entire planet. And of course, the money follows the opportunity. For the very first time, global investment in clean energy is now way ahead of investment in fossil fuels. And this isn't a shift that's just driven by idealism. It's happening because investors can clearly see where the future of growth actually is. So this new economic reality is really the engine of what Stern calls the new growth story. And it's a story where taking climate action doesn't slow us down at all. It actually fuels a more dynamic, more efficient, and more prosperous economy for everybody. This growth isn't just random either. It's powered by this incredible, self-reinforcing cycle of 6 connected drivers. It all kicks off with lower costs from innovation that allows for things to scale up, which leads to better resource efficiency and makes whole systems like transport and energy more productive. And the results? They're really tangible. You get better health from less pollution, which improves our human capital, which then attracts even more investment, and the whole amazing cycle starts all over again. Let's make this a little more real. Take a look at Medellín, Colombia. They integrated cable cars right into their public transport system. Now, they didn't just cut emissions, no. They connected poorer communities to jobs, they slashed commute times, and they made their whole city run more productively. That is a direct economic win, right there. Or just think about health. When we move away from burning fossil fuels, we get cleaner air. Simple as that. And that doesn't just prevent millions of premature deaths. It also means fewer sick days, a healthier, more productive workforce, and billions, truly billions saved in public health spending. This is a direct boost to our economy. And, this new growth story presents a particularly historic opportunity for the developing world. It's a chance to chart a completely new course for the future. As Kenya's President William Ruto puts it so well, developing nations do not have to follow the same dirty, inefficient path that industrialized countries took. They can actually leapfrog right over it, directly to the new, clean technologies of this century. And the source of all this potential is crystal clear. The Global South holds the vast majority of the world's untapped renewable energy. Africa, for example, has more than half of the planet's best solar resources, but it only gets about 2% of global solar investment. The room for growth here is just immense. The best way to think about it is the telecom revolution. So many nations in Africa and Asia, they didn't spend decades building out all that expensive landline infrastructure. Nope, they went straight to mobile phones. The exact same logic applies to energy. Why would you build a dirty, centralized grid from the last century when you can build a clean, decentralized one for this one? Okay, so when you put all of these pieces together, it becomes so clear that we have to reframe this entire conversation. It's obvious the choice was never really between the economy and the environment. The real choice is between two completely different economic futures. We can either stick with the old story, a path of inefficiency, pollution, and just massive risk, or we can embrace the new story, a path driven by investment, innovation, and shared prosperity. And as Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala reminds us, that window to choose the better path, it's closing. Every single moment we continue down that old road, we're not just increasing climate risk, we're actively leaving the biggest economic opportunity of our generation just sitting there on the table. So at the end of the day, the evidence is all there. We have the technology, we have the economic incentives, we have a clear path to a world that isn't just safer and more stable, but is also more prosperous. The choice isn't really whether to act anymore, but how boldly and how quickly we're going to seize this historic opportunity.